Hello, today we'll be talking about muscular strength and endurance. These two components of fitness are very important to look at because they can actually reap multiple benefits. For one, it could decrease the risk of developing osteoporosis, as resistance training can actually increase our bone density. Other things it can actually do is improve our glucose tolerance in pre and post diabetic patients. Muscular strength training can actually improve our overall stability within our body as well, as it can strengthen our core, which alleviates low back pain, which is associated with weak abdominal muscles. Since daily activities require upper body strength, it can actually improve our overall quality of life as well, make us more self efficient and independent as we age also. Other things it can actually do is decrease our fat mass and increase our fat free mass, which is all correlated with weight management. Okay, so what is muscular endurance? Muscular endurance is the body's ability to perform repeated contractions over time. This can be measured in one of two ways. We could either do the abdominal curl up test, or what we're demonstrating today is the push up test. It's real simple to administer. The only thing we'll need is a mat and a subject. Okay, so before we begin, we're going to have to explain the purpose of our test to our clients. The reason being is to test the muscular strength and endurance of the upper body. We're going to have our clients perform as many repetitions as they can until they can't anymore, or until they at least break form on the last two repetitions. Remember to have them breathe in on the down phase and breathe out during the up phase. Okay, so if your subject is a male, just a quick pointer about their form. You want to make sure that they start from the down position with their hands facing forward below their shoulders. We want to have their head up at all times, and we want to also make sure that their back is straight also. As they come up and down, we're going to be using their toes as a pivotal point with their feet plantar flexed. If your subject is a female, we're going to have them do the modified knee push-up version. Here they're going to start at the up position. Their head is still going to be facing up with their back straight at all times with their hands shoulder width apart. Only thing here is we're going to be using their knees as a pivotal point. Their legs are going to be in contact with the ground together, and their ankles are going to be plantar flex as well. Alright, so for both male and females, you want to make sure that as they raise their body, they're going to go ahead and straighten out their elbows. And as they return to the down phase, you want to make sure that their chin makes contact with the mat and not their stomach. Another thing, as they raise their body, you want to make sure that their back is straight at all times until they straighten out their arms in a straight arm position. The maximum number of repetitions that your client could do consecutively without rest will be counted as your score, and the test will be stopped when you notice that they're unable to perform the exercise or until they break form in the last two reps. Once you tally up how many push-ups your client can do, then you could relate it to the norms of what fitness category they fall into related to their age and sex. Alright everybody, so what is muscular strength? Muscular strength is the body's ability to load an external force or resistance in one single contraction. That's better known as a one repetition maximum. Or you can have your clients do a percentage of their one repetition maximum, loading or pushing a resistance at multiple contractions, termed submaximal repetition maximum. This kind of test is more for your adolescents, more for your elderly, and or either your population who doesn't exercise too much, where health and risk of injury is a concern. You wouldn't want them to load an external force or resistance in one single repetition, as that puts more strain on the body and could lead to injury. So two ways of testing your muscular strength is either statically or dynamically. Statically is when you push a resistance that isn't moving. This type of setting you can use tensiometers or you can use hand grip dynamometers. This kind of equipment isn't always easily accessible. It's more for a research lab, research setting type environment. Isn't always accessible and is often expensive. Other ways that you can actually test it are actually in a weight room. You can use a bench press or incline machine to test the muscular strength of your chest, your triceps, and your shoulders respectively. Or you could even use a leg press machine. There you can test the muscular strength of your hips and your legs as well. Okay, so before you have your client or subject perform their exercise, you want to make sure that they get a 5 to 10 minute proper warm up. You can have them do a light intensity exercise, such as maybe a jump rope, maybe some push-ups. Aerobic exercise as well. They can do a treadmill or cycle ergometer or bike. You can also have them do some static stretching or some light repetition exercises on the actual equipment that you'll be using as well. Again, this is all just to localize blood flow to the body and get a proper response on the exercise that you'll have your subject be doing. Another thing you also want to make sure is they're using the correct posture on every contraction. Again, this is just to avoid the risk of injury. You don't want any muscles getting strained, any parts of the bones or anything like that getting hurt. You also want to make sure that they get their full range of motion on the eccentric and concentric contraction. You also want to make sure that their movement speed is consistent on every repetition as well. Um, and of course, for the one repetition maximum and your submaximal repetition maximum, you want to have your spotters there. You don't want anyone getting hurt. Even if you want to demonstrate the exercise to them, that way they can get familiar with the workout, also do that as well. That's going to be very important. You don't want anyone hurting themselves again. And as just mentioned, you want to make sure that they do their proper warm up to localize blood flow to the body. Okay, so before you begin, you want to go ahead and make sure you have your subject do a proper warm up. Here we're having our subject do 10 repetitions with a 45-pound bar. You want to make sure that you get the absolute value, the last interval within 4 trials. Within each trial, you want to allow at least 3 to 5 minutes of rest to allow the body to recover. When you begin the exercise, you want to start off at a weight about 50 to 70% of the perceived capacity. Here, our subject was able to lift about 95 pounds with no issue. As the intervals go on within each trial, you want to go ahead and add at least 5.5 between 44 pounds within each trial. And then wait your 3 to 5 minutes and then move on to the next trial. So here we added 20 more pounds. Our subject was able to do that with no issue. We waited another 3 to 5 minutes and added another 20 pounds. You can see that our subject is still able to keep the same form, range of motion, and speed. So then we waited for another 3 to 5 minutes and added another 20 pounds. Alright, so on the last trial, you can see that the weight gets a little heavy for our subject, but he's still able to keep the same range of motion and speed. On the last trial, the weight that you record is going to be an absolute repetition maximum. Okay, so what you want to do now is go ahead and grab the amount of weight that they're able to lift in one single contraction on the last interval. You're also going to need their body weight in pounds. With the two, what you want to do is grab the amount of weight they lifted on the last interval and divide that by their body weight. That'll give you what fitness category they fall into related to their age and sex. Since we did bench press, this will give us the muscular strength for the upper body. So another thing you can actually do with that one repetition maximum weight is test their anaerobic endurance. All you'll need to do is take 75% amount of the weight that they are able to do on that last interval. This will give you an estimated amount of how much weight they can lift at 10 reps to fatigue. Okay, so as mentioned earlier with the submaximal test, this isn't going to be as strenuous in the body, so this is actually a lot safer than the one repetition maximum. And again, you want to have your client do a proper warm-up. Here we're again having them do 45 pounds at 10 repetitions. The only difference here between the submaximal and one maximal is that we're going to do between 2 and 10 repetitions. We're still going to start off at a weight between 50 and 70% of the perceived capacity. Here we're having our subject start off at about 65 pounds. Our subject was able to lift 65 pounds at 5 repetitions. So we wait 3 to 5 minutes and go on to the next trial. After the 3 to 5 minutes, we added 30 more pounds. Remember, speed, range of motion, and posture is going to be very important. Remember to always have your spotter there if necessary to prevent injuries. Again, just as with the 1RM, we're still allowed to bump up the weight between 5.5 and 44 pounds. Our subject was able to do 7 repetitions at 95 pounds. We then added 20 more pounds to the weight. Remember, with each contraction, speed, range of motion, and posture is to remain consistent with each repetition. Our subject was able to do 7 repetitions with the added resistance. We then waited another 3 to 5 minutes to wait for the last trial. After the recovery period, we then added 20 more pounds. You can see that the weight gets a little struggling for our subject, but he's still able to exert the load. He was able to give us an absolute multiple repetition maximum of 125 pounds. Okay, so from the anaerobic endurance test, we could then test out our one repetition maximum from this equation. All we'll need is the weight lifted and the number of reps performed. Keep in mind, this equation will become less accurate if the repetitions exceed over 10, and if the weight is only between 45 and 310 pounds. Another way of testing out our 1RM from an equation is getting the amount of weight that you lifted on the last trial and dividing it by 0.75. This is a more accurate way of testing out your 1RM, as genetic influences are involved, such as muscle fiber, muscle to tendon ratio, and limb length. Because of these factors, it wouldn't be fair to relate the strength between individuals, as those factors can vary between one another.